What's up, folks? We are back with another midweek banger. Apparently, the last midweek update I made was helpful, so some people are asking for it, and here we are, ask and you shall receive. Now, a lot has gone by since just the last recording, which was on Saturday, and what I wanted to talk about today to start this episode off is our dear old friend, Michael Burry. I mean, this guy's like Dennis Rodman, right? NBA's boring without him. Finally, he's tweeting again, and he's coming up, and he's short the AI stocks, and he came out swinging, basically saying that these companies, Meta, Google, Oracle, Microsoft, Amazon, so on and so forth, they're extending the depreciation useful life of their chips, essentially. Right? So they're saying like, our chips will last longer, and through financial, magic, they are able to essentially overstate their earnings by a pretty hefty amount. I mean, he's saying 26.9% for Oracle, 20.8%, so on and so forth. And so this is on a 2-year product cycle, this is quite a big accusation. You're essentially saying they're cooking the books, right? They're fraudulent accounting to push up earnings numbers. And this is, interesting for me because there was a company that did this as well. Not exactly this, but basically cooking the books. And that company was the company that Nvidia replaced in the S&P 500, namely Enron. I don't know how much or how many of you rather know this, but if you know Enron, that was the huge company that was the biggest scandal, one of the biggest scandals ever in America, right? They were caught fraudulently cooking the books, and they were taken out of the S&P 500, and the company that replaced them was none other than Nvidia. Right? In 2001 rather, right? Go figure. So Nvidia comes in and replaces the company that was disgraced essentially from cooking the books and basically lying about how much money they're making and what their earnings are. And if you don't know, you probably know this, but if you haven't, there's even a documentary on Netflix called The Smartest Guys in the Room, documenting the crazy stuff that Enron was doing, and they were one of the largest companies at the time. I guess, if you're not old enough, you might not know this, but it was a huge, huge deal when Enron got, caught basically red-handed. And we got this guy over here, Jeff Skilling, who I want to just, play a little clip. Now, Jeff Skilling used to work at McKinsey & Company. I used to work there, so I know what that environment is like, right? I spent 6 years of my life in that company, and he was like a senior partner at McKinsey, one of the youngest people to make partner at the company, and then he became a senior partner before he left, and then became, he went into Enron and did what he did, unfortunately. And here's the thing about McKinsey. It's got a really good brand name, prestigious name, Harvard of consulting, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't have a great track record of people who have left the company and got on to do some nefarious things, one of which is Jeff Skilling. But there was also the ex-CEO, Rajat Gupta. He was the CEO while I was working at McKinsey at that time. And, he went to jail basically because he got caught up with Rajaratnam at the Galleon hedge fund scandal. And he actually went to jail for like 2 years, right, for insider trading. So say what you will about the company and its prestigious name, and I can talk about it because I used to work there. And so, I know what it was like in there, what went in underneath. And there were some in fact, some of the smartest people I met were from that period when I was working at McKinsey. But I tell you, man, yeah, there was some shadiness going on. And you can see, right, after some of the people left, well, look what happened. Now, I wanted to show you a clip, or 2 clips rather, from the Enron era and another clip from today's era to show you how similar the culture is. This was a suggestion made by somebody, and I agree that it's good to bring this up. And the thing is, back in the day, there was a moment in time where Jeff Skilling came on and did something that was the beginning of the end, basically, where, the rock star, affectation he had started crumbling down around him. And just listen to what was going on over here.
Sort of aggressively wondering out loud why it was that Enron, as a financial services company in effect, could not release a balance sheet with its earnings statement like most financial institutions do.
You're the only financial institution that can't produce a balance sheet or a cash flow statement with their earnings.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Asshole.
And then quite...
And so what happened here was basically, I mean, he was caught saying the word asshole, and this actually became a big deal, right? Like later on, when he had to appear in front of Congress and give testimony after the whole blow up, because, you know, it was such a big deal, they actually brought that up, like, you know, why did he use that word? And that actually was the beginning of the end for him, where his image, which used to be squeaky clean, rock star image, you know, the smartest guys in the room type of thing, started to turn against him. And that's what you're kind of seeing today. And I'm going to play a clip here. And this clip is basically with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, with Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella being interviewed in a podcast.
How can a company with $13 billion in revenues make 1.4 trillion of spend commitments? You know, and you've heard the criticism,
First
Sam.
of all, we're doing well more revenue than that. Second of all, Brad, if you want to sell your shares, I'll find you a buyer. I just, enough. Like, you know, people are, I think there's a lot of people who would love to buy OpenAI shares. I don't think you would,
including myself, including myself.
People who talk with a lot of like breathless concern about our compute stuff or whatever, that would be thrilled to buy shares. So I think we could sell, you know, your shares or anybody else's to some of the people who are making the most noise on Twitter, whatever, about this very quickly. We do plan for revenue.
Well, do you see how his facial expression changed when Sam kind of threatened to sell his shares off? So I mean, this is a very legitimate question. This is what I brought up in the last episode. How can a company with $12 billion, I said $20 billion, basically, you know, under $20 billion revenue be getting, you know, enough money to spend on capitalization of infrastructure projects for trillions of dollars? Doesn't make any sense, right? And so he was asking that question, and Sam's response was, I'm gonna, you know, it's all about FOMO stock price, right? Nothing to do with reality, and I'm gonna threaten you for bringing that up by removing your insider shares, and that's his response, right? And then he later on says something about, you know, we're going to grow so that revenues. Dude, you know how much you're going to have to grow in terms of growth year over year to pay for trillions of dollars of infrastructure projects? I mean, come on, guys. Like this, again, this is intellectual idiocy, right? Sounds smart and all this, but you can see like this was a moment also where you're seeing like this, you know, this image of just kind of turning, right? The hubris, right? Now you're becoming that guy, the hated guy, right? And that's what's happening. And this is something that I think is going to continue. And look, who knows which of the AI, you know, jerk squad is going to get caught with some funny business in their spreadsheet accounting. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand, with all that money circle jerking around themselves, round tripping here and there, that it's squeaky clean. There's nothing to be worried about. It's highly, highly unlikely, right? It just doesn't pass the common sense Fat Tony test, right? The only people that get bamboozled by that are idiots and people who are just like PhD type of thinkers who think only within the box and can't think anything outside of that reality within that box. All right, so moving along here, I wanted to also bring up that, look, it's not about the chips, right? It's about electricity. We have got data centers, right, that are just data centers. So these are the largest companies that build data centers, two of the largest ones. They've finished building them, and they essentially can't turn them on. They can't flip the switch on because there's no electricity to power it. I mean, how stupid is that? It's like they built the whole thing, and they realize they can't turn the power on, right? Because the power grid can't support the huge demands that these huge data centers command. And so what are you going to do now? I mean, I want to see what's going to happen here, but basically, I mean, unless they build a nuclear power plant right next to their data center, they're toast, right? Where's they going to get electricity? The data grid can't handle it without frying the freaking grid itself. These idiots didn't even, I mean, come on, right? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Then, it's not just that, right? In a separate interview, like the CEO of Microsoft came out and said he literally doesn't have enough energy to feed his Nvidia GPU chips, and they're just sitting in racks and they can't be turned on. Right? This is the CEO of Microsoft, which owns OpenAI and is one of the biggest customers of Nvidia. They can't turn on their chips. Forget about manufacturing it. Where are you going to get the electricity and the power to power all this from? That's a big problem, right? It's like the problem they had with EVs. All of a sudden they couldn't, in the UK, they didn't have the power grid to electrically charge all the EVs at home. I mean, so then what you going to do? You can't build power grids overnight. It's not going to happen that way. And that's why people like this guy, who might know a thing or two about chips, right, came out and stirred the pot by saying China is going to win the AI race against the United States, right? And look, this guy is the CEO of by far the largest AI chip company in the world. So I would think he knows one or two things more than you or I do about this. And for him to come out and say this, some people might say, look, he's just saying that so that he's going to get everybody to buy more of the circle jerk that they're doing, and they'll fund match by doing a scare tactic that China is going to beat them. I mean, there's no way to prove or disprove that is in his mind, right? But that's besides the point. The point here is he comes out and says this, right? And then you come out with this chart, which I've shown many times, right? Over and over. I even got into some debate in the Discord channel. By the way, the Discord channel, I think we're going to hit 1,000 this week, which is crazy, right? Last week we were in the 800s. Now we might eclipse 1,000, and that's a pretty big milestone. So if you still haven't joined the Discord server and you enjoy this kind of information but wanted more up to date on a daily basis, that's what the Discord server is. We've got a great group of people there that have joined and created a culture over there. So yeah, hop on by when you can. And I keep bringing this up over there because if you just look at China's electrical generation output over the past decades, it has just completely skyrocketed, where the United States is basically flat. And yes, China has a lot more people and has a manufacturing industry. That's why they had to do this for sure. But what the point here is, they have the ability, they have a proven track record that they can do this, right? It's not a question of, hey, can China build out electric infrastructure to electrify data centers? It's they can do it, and they're in the middle of doing it already, okay? Whereas with the United States, with a flat line, it's unclear. Can they it's not guaranteed, right? Can they even go up? It's unclear, right? They haven't been able to, right? They haven't been able to. You can make the argument that they haven't had the need to, but now the need is definitely there. Now, will they have the manufacturing, right, capabilities to do it? And oh, by the way, it's not just manufacturing, right? Because they have other things they have to worry about in the United States. Like this Data Center Watch report that came out, they're saying $60+ billion of data center projects have been blocked, right, by local opposition. Now, this has nothing to do whatsoever with your manufacturing and your ability to create infrastructure projects and execute on them on budget, on time. No, this is completely something to do with people just not wanting it, right? There's activist groups across 24 states, and they're organizing to block data center construction and expansion, right? They already blocked $18 billion worth. I don't know if you know this, but this is going on. It's a pretty big deal. There's a huge backlash to data center development. It's bipartisan, meaning it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, everybody just doesn't want it, right? And there's additional opposition, especially when there's energy generating infrastructure associated with the data center, which is you're going to have to do because there's no energy again. So, and that's just another non-technical, problem the United States faces when they're trying to do this data center and energy build out thing. It's cultural, right? And people don't want it, right? On top of can you even do it with your industrial and manufacturing base? Can you execute it on budget and not go over budget and all this? Chinese know how to do that, right? So here's the thing. That's probably a big reason why Jensen Huang said China's probably going to win. You just look at that chart; it's game over. Without electricity, it doesn't matter how much chips you have. It's just going to be on a powered off state. And I've shared this many times in my earlier episodes. But China is going to achieve it already. If it already hasn't, it's about to achieve parity with the foundational models, right? So that's kind of commoditized. And with the hardware chip level making, even Jensen Huang says they're just a few quarters behind, right? And I talked about how China has their own, like Huawei has its own chip using different lithographic capabilities that don't require, the monopoly in Europe and in Taiwan, right? They can do it themselves. They can do it themselves without the rest of the world. But, electricity is not something that you can just print like money. You can't just like print money and have electrical grid all of a sudden like you can do with debt. The United States can't, there's no shortcuts to that, right? It's like kind of like the rare earths thing. There's no shortcuts. You can't, the processing, and you're gonna kill your environment with toxic chemicals to process the rare earth. There's no shortcuts to it, right? So that's the thing, right? This is where in the game of chess, China kind of has this upper hand, if you will, this like these check booths that the U.S. is finding in itself. What you gonna do now, right? One thing the U.S. could do is just build nuclear power plants outside of the general population area, like in Alaska or wherever, and just build data centers right there, and then import back the foundational models after they've been trained, right? And just do the training outside because it's dirty, something like that. But my point here is, look, there's a lot of headwinds facing AI, particularly AI in the United States. There's this circle jerk going on. There's funny accounting that's most likely going on. We've got people like Michael Burry starting to call shots. And there are people who are, here's the other thing, there are people who are saying, no, Michael Burry's wrong, right? Chips, we're still using chips from before and all. Look, I get it, right? There's a shortage of chips for demand, right? There's back order. But with the electrical problem, right? The electricity demand problem, and basically things like what I'm going to show you, which is, SoftBank selling its entire stake of Nvidia worth almost $6 billion in one shot. That happened yesterday, right? And then I think what happened after that was that after SoftBank did this, their stock tanked 10% the next day in the Nikkei, right? They just crashed 10% right after and people are saying like, oh no, that's actually a good thing. That says more about SoftBank needing to reallocate. They're already 100x that, so they need to free up capital, go somewhere else. Look, those are all just excuses, right? You're not seeing them. This is not good. Why would you close your entire Nvidia position? Why'd you leave some of it? You close the entire thing up like that. Why now? Right? That is not a good thing. And you might want to talk. This reminds me of how there's some expats who go to let's say Bangkok, Thailand, and they get bar girled, right? They go out to a bar, meet a bar girl, and then they become their boyfriends, and the bar girl's their girlfriend. They pay for all the thing. Then one night, all of a sudden, the bar girl their girlfriend doesn't want to go out with them, and they see that same bar girl with another guy at a different bar, and then they come home and they try to justify why it's okay. It's like, oh, maybe she just had a hard time and she needs money, and I didn't want to give her money so she's desperate and she's going out to other guys to ask for more money, and they come up with all kinds of crazy stories, right, to justify why all of a sudden their girlfriend, a bar girl, is back at the bar with some other dude. And but people do this, right? You don't want to believe the bad truth, right? Especially if it's your girlfriend. So you come up with justifications. That's basically what's going on. People trying to come up with all kinds of stories about why, SoftBank doing this is not bad. They need to do it for this reason, for that reason. So it's actually a good thing and blah, 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 blah. Dude, that's no different than the sorry loser justifying why the bar goes with another guy in a different bar, right? Stop doing it, right? Recognize the obvious. It's not good news. It's bad. That happened, and move on. Learn from it. So that happened. And I want to use that as a transition into what I've been talking. So I don't normally trade Nvidia. I mean, I actually never traded Nvidia. I just don't touch the stock. But I have been watching it because there's some interest of some people in the Discord forum about Nvidia that were talking about it. So I started looking at it and I started trying it. And I said, look, this to me looks like a double top here. And this is the neckline, and we just broke it. So next thing I'm thinking, we're going to go down more, go back to the neckline, get swatted back down and confirmed the double top. I said that was probably, told people that's what I think was going to happen. Then what happened was, well, basically that happened, right? It went further down, got on, swatted back down, went down. And I said, look, we're probably going to go down to support all the way down here, right? Like now that this has been established, we're probably going to go down here, right? That's what I said afterwards. And so what happened afterwards is we did go down there, right? We went all the way down here, just where I said we're going to go. And so what I did say in my last midweek video was I said, look, now that we're down here, we're probably going to have a rally back up, right? We're going to probably rally back up. And I said, look for the rally to start at the beginning of this week, which we're into now. And we'll see where the rally goes, possibly even all the way back to the neckline. And so what happened? Well, yeah, we sure had a big rally, right? I didn't draw the lines here, but you know what was going on. Here's a neckline, here's a double top, right? And so yeah, look, we did it. So it's exactly what I thought was going to happen. We had a rally back up to around the neckline, and well, guess what happened? We got rejected again. So the question now becomes, what's going to happen here, Sang? What do you think is going to happen now after making all those calls? Well, honestly, I don't really know, but I can tell you that this has now become resistance, right? This purple line, which is the exponential moving average that I tracked, the 200 hourly one, it was resistance here and here and here ever since we broke it. So what used to, there's resistance. So, I'm going to watch this, right? Basically, if we can't get above this again and stay above it, maybe break above it, go back down. If we can't do that, right? If we can't do that, then we're just going to continue going down, down, and down, right? So I'm not going to say I have a fortune teller crystal ball, know what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you, like, at this stage, basically, given everything else that I said was going to happen, at this stage, I'm going to wait and see what happens over here, right? Because that's going to tell me whether or not we're on an upward or downward trajectory based on the reaction. And we're going to see that today because as of this morning, right before the market starts, we're already approaching this. So I'm going to see what's going to happen here, and that's going to tell me. And as soon as we see the reaction there, you're going to know what's up. Now, the stock market, as you saw in my last episode, which I specifically said, the beginning of next week, which we're into now, is going to start with a relief rally. And we may have a turnaround Tuesday, which we didn't because we went up yesterday some more. And so what happened was, as I expected, we did have a relief rally, and it went pretty strong even into Tuesday. So the relief rally was stronger than I thought. I didn't think we were going to go all the way down, right? And what we did was we did break over here, we tested it, right? And we found support. So this is actually looking pretty bullish so far, right? Because of this retest and successful retest going up. Now, having said that, my base case where weeks ago I said this was probably the top, that hasn't changed, right? And that won't change until we actually clear that and clear a double top and just keep moving up. And then that obviously isn't the top anymore. And obviously I'm going to have to change my strategy. But until that happens, the base case still remains. And what we have here is a pretty big rebound up to the Fibonacci of 78.6 over here, which we're right at. Now, if we continue going up here, I'll be looking to see if we do a double top. And if we don't and bounce back and go up, then look, we're going up. It's a very strong bullish, and I don't have any qualms about, saying that, right? And adjusting my strategy, because look, you never be a perma anything. I tell this all the time, right? I say it all the time in the Discord server. I tell it to you guys and girls who are watching this. Never be a perma anything. Don't be a perma bull. Don't be a perma bear, right? If there's one thing to be a perma, is be a perma winner, right? In generating alpha returns. So I think we're going to see what's going to happen here really soon, right? Is this fib level going to hold? And if we go back down, is this going to hold again as a bounce, or are we going to do some kind of thing like that? So this is going to be a very interesting point over here, right? Now, I don't play the stock market going long because I'd rather play the gold and silver and derivatives markets for gold and silver, because that has a much better risk-reward ratio. Because even if equities go down, I do think precious metals continue to go up until we have a major liquidation event, at which point everything goes down. But usually, equities will go down and precious metals will continue to go up. And precious metals going up more than it has for equities, right? So anyway, as far as gold goes, now if you've been following me, you've been watching me, I said, look, back on November 6th, right? I said, look, we finally broke above the line, so I said, here, I'm going long, right? That's when I went long, right, on November 6th. And basically, Since November 6th, what has happened? Well, we had that massive move up, which I caught it all, right? And that was a great trade. That's made me quite a chunk of money. And so because of that, I still think we're in a very bullish situation and configuration in gold. Now, this is probably going to continue to, the moving average is going to continue up, and we may retest this and go up. But generally, the trajectory is that we're going to go up. And the same thing for silver. I also trade silver. I'm in SLV as of last night, right? And basically, I was saying to everybody, look, we've got this inverse head and shoulder playing, and it is at our bottom. So, don't say inverse head and shoulders at tops, okay? That's just wrong, TA. And we were coming down and fighting a bottom, and inverse head. So I said, look, we're probably gonna, if we break 51.50, we're gonna go up to 49.50, right? I'm sorry, if we break 49.50, we're probably gonna rock it up to 53. And the moment we broke it, I got in. I also rolled that up. Are we at 53? Well, we're getting there, right? We're like somewhere here already. So a little bit more, I'm going to ride and then cash out. I already cashed out, actually. I go in and out of it. But I've been collecting a lot of profits based on these. So I do, when I go long precious metals, not equities, because for the reasons I showed you, fundamental picture is not great. We're going on basically FOMO trades, right? Like, I just buy. Like, I don't like doing that. Whereas precious metals, there's actually fundamentals driving it. And barring a liquidation event, which I'm very careful about, which is why I'm in paper and not physical silver and gold, that it's going to continue to go up. And it looks like we have, in fact, found the bottom, which I called out and timed and shared with you. So the last thing I'll leave you with here is the Bitcoin story, which is perplexing because it did not really, yesterday it went down, right? So now pre-market, it's going up a little bit today, but it did not participate in that huge run-up. It went down. So here's the thing. That's a red flag to me. Why is Bitcoin not, and crypto in general, not participating in this run? This is one of the reasons why I'm very skeptical again. I still, unless we make a new high, like I'm still, nothing has changed in my base case, right? I do think this is still a corrective move, that we're probably just filling the gaps and we may go down. But I'm not going long stocks. I'm going long precious metals and making more than if I had been going long, S&P 500. And in the meantime, I still have my hedging trading account. So let's see what the next couple of days, into the week brings for us. And I'll see you in the weekend. Happy trading.